Welcome to Cocoa Maker Episode 2. I'm here with Eduardo, Noah, and Martin, and we're going to be teaching you the basics of Cocoa. This week, we're going to be teaching you the syntax of Cocoa, how equations works, how if statements works, functions and classes, methods, all of that stuff. Different brackets works in a different way. The parentheses, you basically get you can put around like things to make a boolean, which is a yes or no, if anybody knows what that means. A boolean, so you can like say in between those two brackets, if this equals that, or if this doesn't equal that, and it would return yes or no, depending on the result. Box brackets are used typically for going through arrays of stuff in C, or for calling methods inside a class. Braces are used for like if and then, then and stuff like that. It's basically to start some code and then ends where the code ends inside of that location. Equations. These are all the different types of equations you can use. You can use equals, times divided by percent, which is limits, times by what it equals, and divided by what it equals. To explain this, I'm going to have to go into more detail by creating a sample project. In this sample project, I'm going to make an example of each of these equations and what you can do with them. Within Xcode, you can go and create a new project by Command-Shift-N or go into File menu and New Project. Inside of here, go into Applications, Command Line, and choose Foundation. Last week's episode, I explained the different project templates there are. Choose New, and we're going to name this one If. So now we got this project called If with the M and all that. I explained everything else in a previous episode. Inside the if, the M is where we're going to be doing most of this stuff. What we're going to do here is we're going to define an integer and run different things over it to make it equal different things and log the different results that we get to show how the different equations work. To create the integer, you go int for integer, and then we're going to name this value. You can name it whatever you want, but I'm naming this one value. We're going to make it equal to 1,242. Now we're going to do different things to that and find out if it's what we want it to be. So we're going to create an init log, and we're going to return a integer, and we're going to do value just to name things easier to remember. So we're going to basically log out the current value. Now we're going to duplicate this, go here, and we're going to say value equals value percent, which we're going to limit it by 500. So we're basically going to limit it so it doesn't go above 500, just to see what it returns. Let's not make it equal. Let's just log what that says. And then we're going to add another one. And this one, we're going to divide it by 100. If we can do whatever we want, though. And then the next one, we're going to times by 432. Now we're going to build this. Compiling.
You should put like line breaks between them.
Line breaks? What do you mean?
Otherwise, they're gonna be on like the same line. It's gonna be a huge number.
They're on different lines. It already does that, and its log is different.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now we're going to go into the build, the debug, and pop up the results. Now we got the value. We made it so it doesn't go above 500, and that gave us 242. We divided it by 100, and that gave us 12. And then we times that by 432, and that gave us that huge number. And that's the different equations. If statements is not, which is the explanation point, is equal, which is two equal signs, is not, which is exclamation point, and the equal sign, greater than, less than, greater than, or equal to, less than, or equal to.
I have a question. What is the difference between the first one and the third one?
Of which?
Yeah. Is not and is not equal.
Well, is not, you can use to change a boolean from no to yes. And is not equal is if it doesn't equal.
Alright.
So, you'd have 1 does not equal 2. So if 1 does not equal 2, then go and do something else. And then you can have a boolean for in Cocoa they have is a folder. So you can say if is not a folder by adding the is not in front of it.
Okay.
And that's all the different statements. We're going to go ahead and go into how it works inside the if project. So here in the if project, we're going to add if value does not equal 1242, then in this log is not 1242. And then we're going to do an else. An else basically says if it's not the value up here, then it goes down to the next one. You can also do an else if, which is else if value does equal 1242, then in its log is 1242. And let's see what this returns. So it's saying it is 1242, and now we know that the value equals 1242. Now let's modify it by changing it by adding value times itself by 4232. And then let's see what, oops, I forgot to end it with a semicolon. Then we're going to build and see what it says now. It says it's not. That means that it does not equal that anymore. So let's find out what it does equal. Is %d value. Now we know that it equals something else. Some huge number. So now we're going to do if greater than and if. So we're going to remove that, go. Value is greater than 1 to 42. And then we're going to say %d for value is greater than 1 to 42. And then let's go ahead and add is greater than or equal to 1 to 42. And then let's just copy this and say is greater than or equal to 142. Let's go ahead and add another if, else if for less than and equal to or less than. Let's make this 1 to 40, 0, 1 to 40. Less than and that should be good enough. Now, whenever we run this, we'll see what it returns. Errors. Oh yeah, that's right. I get into this problem a lot. You should probably remember if you get that error, then it's the opposite way. And now we say that it's greater than 1 to 42 because 5,000 whatever is greater than. Wait a minute. Where does it get that value from? I thought I removed that. Oh, here's my problem. I forgot to add the value to these. And there we go. 1 to 42 is greater than or equal to 1 to 42. Now let's make it greater. 1 to 43 is greater than 1 to 42. Now let's make it less. Let's make it 30. One to 30 is less than 1 to 42. Well, you get the picture. That's how it works. Now let's talk about functions. Functions are a way to call a whole bunch of code. You can pass it arguments to process and return what the process arguments are. You can call functions outside of the file which it's in by adding headers. Headers are ways to pass information from one file to another file. Let's get a demo how functions work. So inside the function main, as I explained last time, it gets called first. So instead of timesing value by 4 to 32, let's go ahead and make a function to do that for us. So as an example, so we're going to go up here and have it return an integer and name it times. Inside the times function, we're going to pass it an integer and name it the integer that's passing value. And then let's go ahead and do a by, which is comma to add another argument, and do integer and name it by. We're going to close that out, and to make this definition of what the function is, we're going to close this out by a semicolon. We're going to copy this code, move it down. That's basically saying it exists, just think it exists. This is what it has that you can do with it. So that, because the way that the code works is it goes linear from the top to the bottom. So you can't call functions that were defined in the bottom unless you say that it exists. Now we're going to define what the function times actually does. We're going to go to start a new line. We're going to use the braces to define the interior of the code and the ending of the code. We're going to do return. We're returning the value times by, and that it completes our function. We can do a whole bunch of other stuff up here, like int return value equals return by, and then return the return value, like that. And we can do a whole bunch of other stuff to process the code if we want. I'm just doing simple. And now we go and replace this with the code we want. You can name it value, you can name it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be named value to pass the argument. So times value by 4232, and that would give us that would times it by that and within the function call. This is how we call the function, if I didn't explain that earlier. And then that should go call the times function, which gets the arguments value and by, times them by each other, put them into a integer named return value, and returns the integer to the what it equals. I'm going to run that, and it should process it, and we get the value from the function. Classes in Objective-C is a reference of an object. An object is a collection of code. You can have a whole bunch of different methods in there and different stuff like that. You can store information like different integers to pass around to different methods, which is really cool. You can do a whole bunch of different things and process a whole bunch of different code in different ways. You can also use different objects to override other objects, which means you can change the function of any string so it has string with time, string with integer and stuff like that, and it would automatically do different codes that you assign to it and return the value as a string. And methods basically is the way you use it. I don't think you can use functions inside of classes, but I could be wrong. I haven't tested it at all, but I may test it this weekend and tell you if you can or not in next week. Now let's explain methods. Methods is basically like functions, but it has a different syntax. You call it differently, and the arguments are sent to it differently. Just like a function, you define what it returns. You can only call a method with inside of a object. Let's write example code for that. Create a new project. Let's do foundation. And name it objects. Inside of objects.m, we have the standard hello world that comes with every single template. And then we're going to go into the different objects and we're going to create a new file. The new file, a panel comes up here. We're going to go into macOS X Cocoa classes. And we're going to use an Objective-C class. An Objective-C class is the standard way of building classes. I'm going to choose it. The naming schemes of classes normally are the initials of the company name, or, for example, with Apple, they use NS for next step and UI for user interface. But the UI doesn't come until iPhone SDK, which you would learn about eventually. Never use the NS namespace unless you know what you're doing and you know you're not going to be intercepting any other classes named by Apple. My namespace is MGM. So now, after we add MGM to the namespace, we're going to add a name for the class. Then you can also just name it the class, but I prefer using the MGM namespace. That way, it's easier to remember what each thing is. And we can include code from different people's and not have their stuff intercepting your stuff. And we're going to name this calculation. The also create header option is to allow you to include headers into other files such as the main file like I'm going to do. The targets, to define which targets are to compile the class within. We're compiling into the target object. Now we're going to click finish. And here pops up the header file. The header file is much like the main file, except it doesn't have the main function in it. Instead, we got the import Cocoa header, which we're going to need to change because we're not using Cocoa, we're using Foundation. So we're going to change this to Foundation. So that's Foundation.h. Because we don't have the framework Cocoa inside of this Foundation project. Down inside of the interface. Okay, the way the interface works is first you do @interface, which defines it's an interface, and then you do MGM calculation, which is the class name. The colon is defining that its super class is in its object. You can also define protocols here by, like, NS connection delegate, and that one defines this, and it also confines to the protocol of NS connection delegate. You don't need this right now, but to add multiple different protocols to this, you just add a comma and type in a different protocol name, like NS file, whatever, like NS whatever, and it would confine to that protocol, which means that your class MGM calculation has some methods which are inside of that protocol. I would explain protocols in a different episode. In between these braces is where you define different objects, such as I'm going to define here the amount and an integer with the currency exchange. And that's what we're going to store information on. We're going to store the amount to times by and the currency exchange, and then we're going to have a method that calculates it all and returns the value. So we save that. Now we're going to create methods to set them and to find out their values. To do that, we're going to make a minus int to return an integer amount, to say that we're going to return the amount. And then to set it, we're going to do minus void set amount, add an argument, name it, add an argument of type integer, and name it the amount. And then we're going to go down and do currency exchange. Return integer currency exchange. And then we're going to do a set minus void, which if you listen to the last episode, it means nothing. Returns nothing. Set currency exchange. And then we're going to have a calculation method, which is going to be int calculate. And that's going to be the basis of our class. We're going to copy this, use the really nifty hotkeys to go into the M file, which is Command Option Up. Now that we're in the M file, we're going to paste inside the implementation, which says we're going to implement the code which was defined in the interface for the class MGM calculation. And we're importing the MGM calculation header so it knows what the class MGM connection contains, as we defined in the interface. We're going to do amount. We're going to return what the amount is, which is return amount. And for the set amount, we're going to do braces amount equals the amount. And that sets the amount inside of the class. Then we're going to do currency exchange. Return currency exchange. And then we're going to do, wait, I forgot to add the currency exchange. So we're going to do that right now. The currency exchange. And then we're going to copy this and put it back inside of the header. Down here, we're going to just do the same thing as set currency exchange equals the currency exchange. And then down in calculate, we're going to calculate it. Return amount times currency exchange. One thing you may want to do is whenever we initialize this object, we may want to have it so that it sets the amount and the currency exchange to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to add ID, which means it's an object that it's going to return. INT, we're going to do that. And then we're going to say if self equals super, so we're calling the super object. Self means we're calling this itself. Super object, init, initialize, in other words. And that's saying if self equals initialize and does not equal nil, then continue on. And set amount equals 0, and currency exchange equals 0. And then we're going to return, because we didn't make it void, we have to return something. So we're going to return self, because it's an object, and that's what we're supposed to return inside of initialize command. So, and that's how we set up things whenever the object gets allocated and initialized. Now we're going to save that, and now that all of that is done, we can go into the objects.m and import everything and set it up. ngm calculation.h, and now we're going to make a new ngm calculation. Because it's an object, we add a star. Calculation equals ngm calculation locate. We're saying grab memory for it, and initialize, which is setting up the memory with the information. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tell calculation to set the amount and the currency exchange. Calculation set amount equals 5472, and then the currency exchange, we're going to set that calculation set currency exchange equals, let's say, $3 per dollar. INT amount equals calculation calculate, and that's basically calling the calculate method and returning the value to here. As I said before, these box brackets are to enclose calls to methods or to get an object out of an array, like argument v. Now we're going to log it out so we see what the answer is to the currency exchange. Because we allocated and initialized it, we need to release it, or at least auto-release it. So after we're done getting the amount and all that, let's go ahead and tell it to release. And that's going to say, okay, no more you, I'm through with you, go away. And now that we're done with that, we build it, and it says the amount is 1,716. And that was CocoaMaker Episode 3. I'm James.
I'm Martin.
I'm Noah.
I'm Eduardo.
And that was CocoaMaker. Have a nice day, and enjoy coding.